I never imagined standing in the lobby of my own restaurant chain for 45 minutes, watching family after family get seated ahead of me. Just a few more minutes, the hostess said for the third time, avoiding eye contact as she led another group to a table I could clearly see was meant for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me show you how one of Atlanta's most successful restaurateurs ended up being treated like an unwanted guest in the very empire she built. The glass doors of Silver Spoon Atlanta swung open as Jasmine Carter stepped inside, her Louboutin heels clicking against the marble floor. The restaurant buzzed with the quiet hum of exclusive dining, crystal glasses clinking, cutlery touching fine china, and the low murmur of conversations between Atlanta's elite. The scent of truffle and aged ribeye hung in the air. Jasmine adjusted her tailored blazer, still riding the high from signing the final acquisition papers just 2 hours earlier. Silver Spoon was now the crown jewel of her restaurant group. 15 locations across the Southeast, each one more profitable than the last. This flagship location would be the first to undergo her vision for rebranding. "Good evening," Jasmine said, approaching the hostess stand with a practiced smile. "Reservation for one under Carter." The hostess, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair whose name tag read Megan, glanced up briefly. Her eyes skimmed over Jasmine's designer outfit and natural hair before returning to her screen. "Carter?" she asked, scrolling through the tablet. "I don't see anything here. Are you sure you have a reservation for tonight?" Jasmine maintained her composure. "Yes, I made it personally 3 days ago. Carter for 7:30. Let me check again." Megan replied, her tone suggesting it was a formality rather than genuine effort. "No, nothing here. We're fully booked tonight, but you're welcome to wait at the bar. It might be quite a while, though." The bar area was packed 3 deep with people waiting for tables. Jasmine checked her watch, 7:28 p.m. "I understand you're busy, but I confirmed this reservation yesterday," Jasmine said, her voice firm but calm. "Perhaps you could check if there's been a system error?" Megan's smile tightened. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Our system doesn't make errors. If you'd like to wait, I can add your name to our list." Before Jasmine could respond, a white couple entered behind her. "Good evening. Welcome to Silver Spoon." Megan's voice warmed instantly. "Name, please." "Thompson, reservation for two at 7:45. "Of course. I have you right here, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Your table will be ready in just a few moments. Would you like to wait at the bar?" Jasmine felt the cool air conditioning raise goosebumps on her skin as she watched the interaction. She'd been in the restaurant business long enough to recognize what was happening. "Excuse me," Jasmine interrupted politely. "They have a reservation for 7:45, but you can seat them now while I'm told to wait indefinitely for my 7:30 reservation that supposedly doesn't exist." Megan's eyes flashed. "Their table is ready, and yours isn't in our system." "I see," Jasmine said quietly. "May I speak with a manager, please? He's quite busy at the moment. I can add your name to our wait list." "The manager, please," Jasmine repeated, her voice dropping an octave but gaining power. From across the dining room, conversations quieted as heads turned. Two women at a nearby table whispered to each other, glancing in Jasmine's direction. A family being seated paused to watch. 5 minutes passed before a man in a charcoal suit approached, his expression already set to dismissal. "I'm Brandon Westfield, the general manager. Is there a problem?" He looked past Jasmine rather than at her. "Yes, there is. I made a reservation 3 days ago, confirmed yesterday, and your hostess claims it doesn't exist. Meanwhile, I've watched 6 parties seated who arrived after me." Brandon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ms. Carter." "Jasmine Carter." "Miss Carter, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We don't have your reservation, and we're completely booked tonight." As they spoke, Megan cheerfully greeted another couple. "Mitchell, party of 4? Your table is ready." The Mitchells had just walked in. Jasmine's jaw tightened. "That's interesting," she said, pulling out her phone. "Because I have the confirmation email right here, sent from your reservation system." Brandon barely glanced at the screen. "Perhaps you made it for another night. Or another location." The restaurant's cool air intensified. Or maybe it was the chill of being unseen. Jasmine felt eyes on her from every corner of the restaurant. Some curious, some uncomfortable, some dismissive. If you've ever been overlooked because of how you look, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happened next changed not just one restaurant, but an entire industry's approach to who deserves a seat at the table. 15 years before that cold evening at Silver Spoon, Jasmine Carter stood in a very different kitchen. The industrial. Fans whirred overhead as 20 culinary students frantically chopped, sautéed, and plated their final exam dishes. Steam clouded the air, mixing with the scent of garlic, herbs, and desperation. 5 minutes remaining. Chef Renaud shouted, his French accent thickening under pressure. Jasmine's hands moved with precision, adding the final touches to her deconstructed peach cobbler. Unlike her classmates, she wasn't panicking. Growing up in her grandmother's kitchen in Southwest Atlanta had prepared her for pressure long before culinary school. Time. Step away from your stations. As Chef Renaud examined each plate, Jasmine watched his expression. When he reached hers, his eyebrows lifted slightly, the closest thing to approval he ever showed. "Miss Carter," he said later as he handed her the top score in the class, "you have the technical skills to succeed. But this industry will never make it easy for someone like you." "Someone like me, chef?" she asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "A black woman," he replied bluntly. "You will need to be twice as good to get half as far. Are you prepared for that?" Jasmine met his gaze directly. "I'm prepared to be the best, period." That conversation became the foundation of Jasmine's career philosophy. After graduating, she took a line cook position at Elevation, one of Atlanta's most acclaimed restaurants. While her culinary school classmates complained about 12-hour shifts, Jasmine worked 14. When they celebrated promotions to sous chef after 3 years, she was still expediting on the line. "Your flavors are bold, but perhaps too ethnic for our clientele," Executive Chef Williams told her during a review. "Our diners expect a certain refinement." Jasmine nodded politely and went home to perfect classic French techniques until her fingers cramped. 6 months later, when she presented a refined menu for a special event, Williams took credit for her ideas in front of the restaurant owner. That night, Jasmine updated her resume. She moved to a smaller restaurant where she finally earned the title of sous chef. Working under Chef Marcus Jones, one of the few black executive chefs in Atlanta, she learned the business side of restaurants: cost control, vendor relationships, and staff management. "The food is only half the battle," Marcus told her. "To own the game, you need to understand the money." Jasmine absorbed everything, taking night classes in business administration while working 60-hour weeks. When Marcus offered her partnership in his new venture, a modern soul food concept called Root, she invested her entire savings. Root opened to critical acclaim but faced the typical struggles of independent restaurants. During their hardest month, with payroll looming and reservations down, Jasmine overheard a conversation at the bar. "It's good, but isn't it just fancy fried chicken?" a man in an expensive suit said to his companion. "I'm surprised they've lasted this long. These urban concepts usually fail within a year." The man hadn't bothered to lower his voice, though Jasmine stood barely 10 feet away in her chef's coat. Clearly part of the restaurant's leadership, that night, she pitched Marcus on a second location in a different neighborhood. "We need to diversify our customer base," she argued, "and prove we're not just a trend." The second route opened 6 months later, followed by a third the following year. By year 5, they had expanded to 6 locations across 3 states, each one profitable. Within its first quarter, when Marcus decided to retire early after health concerns, Jasmine leveraged everything to buy him out. At 35, she became the sole owner of a regional restaurant group valued at $8 million. "The secret to my success," Jasmine once told a reporter from Food and Wine. "I never forget what it's like to be hungry." What the article didn't mention was how often Jasmine still faced the same prejudices she had encountered as a line cook. Even as her restaurant group expanded, she regularly experienced moments that reminded her success hadn't changed how the world saw her. There was the time a vendor refused to discuss pricing with her, insisting on speaking with whoever makes the actual decisions. The bank loan officer who suggested she bring her business partner to the next meeting, unable to believe she was the sole owner. The countless occasions when she was mistaken for the hostess or server at her own establishments. Each incident hardened her resolve rather than breaking it. When the opportunity arose to acquire Silver Spoon, Jasmine recognized it immediately. as both a business coup and a personal statement. The chain of high-end steakhouses had been the domain of old money and exclusivity for decades, exactly the kind of establishment where she'd been made to feel unwelcome throughout her career. It's overpriced, and their balance sheets showed declining profits for 3 straight years, her CFO warned. The renovation costs alone would be massive. They have prime locations in 5 major cities and brand recognition we could leverage. Jasmine countered. Plus, their client list includes every major corporation in the Southeast. What she didn't add was the personal satisfaction she would take in transforming an institution known for its subtle exclusivity into something more reflective of modern Atlanta. The acquisition negotiations took 6 months. The current owner, Richard Harrington III, clearly disliked selling to Jasmine but couldn't ignore her financing and business plan. When they finally signed the papers on a Friday afternoon, she made a reservation at the flagship Atlanta location for the following Monday, her first visit as owner rather than outsider. "Are you sure you don't want to bring the executive team?" her assistant asked. "No," Jasmine replied. "I want to experience it as a customer first, before anyone knows who I am." The discrimination Jasmine faced at Silver Spoon that evening wasn't unique. Across the fine dining industry, Black patrons regularly reported similar experiences. Invisible barriers erected through lost reservations, excessive wait times, poor table assignments, and subpar service that a study published just months earlier had documented the phenomenon through paired testing. When white and Black customers with identical reservations, attire, and group sizes attempted to dine at upscale restaurants, Black diners waited an average of 35% longer to be seated and were 28% more likely to be told no tables were available. Jasmine had read the study carefully, recognizing her own experiences in its statistics. What made this situation different wasn't the discrimination itself. It was that for the first time, she had the power to do more than simply endure it. She stood in Silver Spoon's lobby, watching families who arrived after her being seated. While the manager dismissed her concerns, a memory surfaced from her first restaurant job. She had prepared a special amuse-bouche for a food critic known to be visiting. When she presented it personally, the critic had looked past her to the white male server and asked, "Did the chef prepare this himself?" "I am the chef," Jasmine had replied. The critic's momentary surprise was followed by a dismissive, "Well, it's certainly creative, perhaps a bit ambitious." His review the following week described the same dish as attempting sophistication beyond the chef's capabilities, the only negative note in an otherwise glowing review. That night, Jasmine had questioned her career choice for the first time. Now, 15 years and millions of dollars later, she recognized the same dismissal in Brandon Westfield's eyes. "I understand you're very busy," Jasmine said to the manager, her voice measured and calm despite the anger building beneath her professional exterior. "Perhaps I could speak with Executive Chef Diego? We're acquainted." This wasn't entirely true. They had met once at a charity event, but Diego would almost certainly not remember her. However, the mention of his name caused a flicker of uncertainty in Brandon's expression. "Chef is extremely busy during service," he replied. "I'm sure you understand." "Of course," Jasmine nodded, pulling out her phone again. "In that case, I'll just make a call." Brandon hesitated, perhaps sensing for the first time that this situation might be different from the countless others where he had successfully ushered unwanted guests away. "Perhaps I could offer you a complimentary drink while you wait," he suggested, his tone warming slightly. "We might have a cancellation later this evening." "That won't be necessary," Jasmine replied, dialing a number. "Marcus? It's Jasmine. I think you should join me at Silver Spoon." "Yes, right now. There's something I need you to witness firsthand." She ended the call and looked directly at Brandon. "My COO will be here in 15 minutes. I suggest you use that time to reconsider your approach to customer service." The manager's expression shifted between confusion and concern. "Ma'am, I've explained our situation. We simply don't have any." To see what happens when Jasmine finally reveals who she really is, hit that notification bell right now. Because what happens next changed not just one restaurant's policies, but started a conversation about discrimination that would reach every corner of the culinary world. 7:30 p.m., the exact time of Jasmine's reservation. Jasmine checked her watch, noting that her reservation time had officially arrived. Around her, the restaurant hummed with activity. Servers glided between tables with practiced efficiency. Sommeliers presented bottles with flourishes. Every table seemed filled with smiling, satisfied customers, none of whom looked like her. Perhaps I could wait at the bar for a few minutes, Jasmine suggested to Brandon, maintaining her professional demeanor despite growing frustration. Brandon nodded, seemingly relieved at the suggestion. Excellent idea. Thomas can take care of. You there? The bar area was crowded 3 deep, mostly with white patrons waiting for tables. Jasmine managed to find a small opening at the corner of the bar, where she stood patiently, watching the bartender Thomas serve everyone around her. 7:35 p.m. 5 minutes of being invisible. Thomas made eye contact with Jasmine twice, but served. For other customers who had arrived after her, she observed his friendly banter with them, noticing how his gaze slid past her each time he scanned the bar for the next customer. Excuse me, she finally said, raising her hand slightly. Could I see a menu, please? Just a minute, Thomas replied without looking at her, turning to mix a martini for a man who had just approached the bar. From her position, Jasmine had a clear view of the hostess stand. Megan continued seating parties, checking her tablet, and leading guests to tables. A middle-aged couple approached. No reservation, Jasmine could tell from their conversation. Yet Megan quickly found them a table near the window. 7:42 p.m. 12 minutes of calculated dismissal. What can I get you? Thomas finally asked, his tone suggesting he was doing Jasmine a favor by acknowledging her existence. Sparkling water with lime, please, she replied. He nodded and moved away without comment. 3 minutes later, he returned. With her water, no lime, placed it hastily on the bar without a napkin, and moved on without a word. Jasmine took a sip, maintaining her composure as she observed the restaurant operations with a professional eye. The service flow was efficient, but cold. The table turns were quick, perhaps too quick for a proper fine dining experience. The wine service seemed rushed, with sommeliers spending more time at certain tables than others. All details she filed away for later. 7:50 p.m. 20 minutes of strategic oversight that a commotion near the kitchen caught her attention. A server had dropped a tray of appetizers. The noise briefly silenced nearby conversations, heads turning toward the mess. Among the staff rushing to help, Jasmine spotted a tall man in a white chef's coat with executive piping, Diego Martinez, Silver Spoon's executive chef. Their eyes met across the room. Diego paused, his expression shifting from annoyance at the dropped dishes to recognition, then confusion. He clearly remembered her from the charity event 3 months ago, but seemed puzzled by her presence at the bar rather than at a table. Before he could approach, Brandon intercepted him, speaking quickly while gesturing toward the kitchen. Diego nodded reluctantly and disappeared back through the swinging doors. Jasmine pulled out her phone and opened her email, scrolling to the acquisition documents she'd signed hours earlier. She enlarged the final page with her signature alongside Richard Harrington's, the date clearly visible. Today.as, she sipped her water. Jasmine made notes in her phone about everything she observed. The hostess's selective memory for reservations, the bartender's prioritization patterns, the manager's dismissive attitude, the table assignments visible from her position. 7:58 p.m. 28 minutes of documented bias. Excuse me, miss? A server approached the bar near Jasmine. Are you still waiting for a table? Jasmine looked up from her phone. Yes, I have a reservation for 7:30. The server, whose name tag read Alicia, frowned slightly. That's strange. Let me check with Megan. Jasmine watched as Alicia approached the hostess stand. Their conversation was brief, with Megan shaking her head and gesturing toward the busy dining room. Alicia returned looking apologetic. I'm sorry, but they don't have your reservation. There must have been a system error. Interesting, Jasmine replied, especially since I can see at least 3 empty tables from here. Alicia followed her gaze to the tables in question, then looked back uncomfortably. Those are reserved for guests with confirmed reservations. Like mine, Jasmine stated. It wasn't a question. I should get back to my section, Alicia said. Retreating quickly. 8:05 p.m. 35 minutes of calculated exclusion. From her position at the bar, Jasmine watched as a group of 6 was seated at a table that had been quickly assembled by combining 2 four-tops. The party had arrived without a reservation. She had overheard their conversation with Megan. Yet they were accommodated immediately at the same time. A black couple who had been waiting at the bar was told once again that no tables were available. They eventually left, the woman's expression a familiar mix of frustration and resignation that Jasmine had seen countless times, had worn herself when facing the invisible barriers of fine dining. The door to the kitchen swung open, and Diego emerged again, this time carrying a small plate. He walked directly to the bar, nodding to Thomas before placing the dish in front of Jasmine. Pan-seared scallop with brown butter and sage, he said. Compliments of the kitchen. Before Jasmine could respond, Brandon appeared at Diego's side, his expression tense. Chef, you're needed in the kitchen, he said. Immediately, Diego hesitated. Ms. Carter and I met at the James Beard charity event. I wanted to personally welcome her to Silver Spoon. Brandon's expression flickered between surprise and concern. Of course. Welcome, Ms. Carter. I'll ensure the chef gets back to his duties. As they walked away, Jasmine heard Brandon's urgent whisper. You can't just comp food without authorization. The scallop was perfectly cooked, but Jasmine barely tasted it as she continued her observations. The restaurant's dynamic was becoming clearer with each passing minute. The subtle cues, the coded language. The systematic differences in how guests were treated based on appearance alone. 8:12 p.m. 42 minutes of professional reconnaissance that a family celebrating a birthday was seated at a prime table near the window, the father in a golf shirt, rather than the jacket required by the restaurant's stated dress code. Minutes later, a well-dressed black executive in a custom suit was informed at the door that his attire was unfortunately not up to our standards due to his designer sneakers. Jasmine had seen enough. This wasn't just poor service or an oversight. It was a pattern, one she had experienced throughout her career from the other side. Now, as the owner, she had both the perspective to recognize it and the power to address it. She dialed Marcus's number. It's Jasmine, she said when he answered. How quickly can you get to Silver Spoon, Atlanta? About 10 minutes, he replied. What's happening? I need you to witness something. And bring a copy of today's acquisition documents from the shared drive. On my way, Marcus said, recognizing the controlled calm in her voice that always signaled significant decisions ahead. 8:17 p.m., 47 minutes of strategic patience. Brandon passed by the bar again, noticing Jasmine still there. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face before he approached. Miss Carter, I apologize for the wait. Perhaps we could schedule you for another evening? I'd be happy to personally oversee your reservation. That won't be necessary, Jasmine replied. My colleague is arriving shortly. Once he's here, we'll need to speak with you privately. Brandon's professional smile faltered. I'm afraid I'm quite busy with our guests who have reservations. Trust me, Jasmine interrupted calmly. You'll want to make time for this conversation. Before Brandon could respond, the front doors opened and Marcus entered. 6'3", impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, Marcus commanded attention simply by existing in a space. Heads turned as he scanned the room. Spotting Jasmine at the bar.as he approached. Jasmine noticed Megan straightening her posture at the hostess stand, suddenly alert and attentive in a way she hadn't been for Jasmine alone. Marcus. Jasmine greeted him with a nod. Thank you for coming. Of course, he replied, handing her a leather portfolio. Everything you requested. Brandon approached cautiously. Sir, do you have a reservation? He's with me, Jasmine said, opening the portfolio and removing the acquisition documents. Brandon, I believe now is the time for that private conversation. I'm afraid I don't understand. Let me clarify, Jasmine said, turning the document toward him. My name is Jasmine Carter, CEO of Culinary Heights Restaurant Group. As of 4:30 p.m. today, we are the new owners of Silver Spoon. She watched as comprehension dawned on Brandon's face, followed by shock. As Marcus walked through the door, I pulled out the acquisition paperwork. It's time, I said, watching the color drain from Brandon's face. The portfolio lay open on the bar, acquisition documents clearly visible. Brandon's complexion had shifted from confident flush to ashen gray in seconds. There must be some mistake, he stammered. No mistake, Marcus confirmed, his deep voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby staff. The transaction was completed this afternoon. Ms. Carter now owns the entire Silver Spoon restaurant group. Brandon's eyes darted between Jasmine, Marcus, and the documents. His professional demeanor cracked, revealing panic beneath. I had no idea. We weren't informed. Clearly. Jasmine interrupted, her voice measured. The staff was scheduled to be notified tomorrow morning. I decided to visit tonight as a regular customer to experience the service firsthand. She paused meaningfully. The experience has been illuminating. Brandon swallowed hard. Ms. Carter, please allow me to apologize for any misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Jasmine corrected him. It was discrimination. Systematic and deliberate. I watched it happen not just to me, but to other guests as well. That's not our policy. Brandon protested weakly. Policy is what happens, not what's written, Marcus said. And what happened? Tonight speaks volumes. Jasmine closed the portfolio and stood. Now, I'd like that table I reserved at 7:30. And while we dine, I'll need the reservation records for the past week, the current staffing schedule, and access to your POS system. Data. Brandon nodded rapidly. Of course. Right away. Let me personally show you to our best table. No, Jasmine said. I want the table that was assigned to my reservation, the one you claimed didn't exist. Brandon hesitated, then gestured toward the dining room. Please, follow me. As they walked through the restaurant, conversations quieted. Staff members sensed the shift in power, whispering to each other as Jasmine and Marcus followed Brandon to a table near the kitchen, not one of the prime spots by the windows or in the center of the room. This is where my reservation was. Assigned? Jasmine asked. Knowing the answer, Brandon's silence confirmed it. We'll take it, she said, sitting down. And I'd like Chef Diego to join us, please. Brandon nodded nervously and disappeared toward the kitchen. The nearby tables were. Watching now, curious about the sudden deference shown by the previously dismissive manager. Textbook. Marcus commented quietly as they settled in. They seated you by the kitchen, away from the desirable tables. Standard practice, Jasmine agreed. Along with the invisible bartender, the suddenly booked reservation system, and the selective dress code enforcement. A server approached immediately, not Alicia, but a senior server who introduced himself as Robert. Ms. Carter, Mr. Washington, it's an honor to serve you tonight. May I start you with sparkling water? Perhaps champagne to celebrate your acquisition. Water for now, Jasmine replied. And those documents I requested. Right away, Robert assured her, signaling urgently to another server. Within minutes, Brandon returned with Diego and a tablet. The executive chef's expression was a mix of respect and concern. Miss Carter, it's good to see you again, Diego said, extending his hand. I wasn't aware of the ownership change. Few people were, Jasmine replied, shaking his hand. That was intentional. I wanted to see Silver Spoon as it truly operates when no one's watching. Diego's expression darkened with understanding. I see. Chef, would you join us? Jasmine gestured to an empty chair. I'd like to discuss the kitchen operations while we review these records. As Diego sat, Brandon handed Jasmine the tablet. Here are the reservation records you requested. I should mention that our system occasionally experiences glitches. Let's examine these glitches, Jasmine interrupted, scrolling through the data. Interesting. My reservation is clearly listed here. Jasmine Carter, party of 1, 7:30 p.m. Brandon's face flushed. I don't understand how Megan missed it. Don't you? Jasmine looked up from the tablet. Let's look at the pattern. In the past week, how many reservations were missed or delayed? And who were those customers? Marcus took the tablet, his background in data analytics making him the perfect person to quickly assess the information. Fascinating, he said after a few minutes. There's a clear statistical anomaly. Reservations under names commonly associated with Black or Hispanic individuals were marked as no-shows at triple the rate of other reservations, and their assigned tables were consistently near service areas. Brandon began to protest, but Jasmine held up her hand. The data speaks for itself, she said. Now, I'd like a tour of the kitchen, followed by the entire restaurant. After that, we'll need to speak with all management staff. Diego nodded. I'd be happy to show you the kitchen. As they stood, Robert returned with water and a selection of appetizers, compliments of the kitchen. The sudden attention from staff who had ignored her minutes earlier wasn't lost on Jasmine. The kitchen tour revealed a well-run operation. Diego clearly commanded respect from his team, and the food preparation areas were impeccable. Unlike the front of house, the kitchen staff was notably diverse, a common pattern in high-end restaurants where customers rarely saw who prepared their meals. Your team is impressive, Jasmine told Diego as they observed the line cooks in action. They're the heart of Silver Spoon, he replied. Many have been here for years, despite limited advancement opportunities. Limited how? Marcus asked. Diego hesitated, then spoke candidly. The previous ownership had preferences about who represented the brand to customers. Several qualified staff were passed over for front-of-house promotions. That changes now, Jasmine stated. As they continued through the restaurant, Jasmine noted every detail. The staffing patterns, the table layouts, the customer demographics, the subtle ways the space was designed to create hierarchy. Most tables were occupied by white patrons, with the few diverse customers seated in less desirable locations. When they returned to their table, the food waiting for them was exquisite. Diego's talent was undeniable. But Jasmine barely tasted it as she outlined her immediate expectations to Brandon and the other managers who had been summoned. First, all current reservations will be honored exactly as booked, she instructed. Second, I want a full staff. Meeting tomorrow morning before service, everyone, not just management. Third, I need complete access to all operational systems tonight. Brandon nodded repeatedly. Absolutely, Miss Carter. Whatever you need. What I needed was to be seated. At my reserved time, Jasmine replied evenly. What I need now is accountability. By 10:30 p.m., when the last dinner guests were finishing their meals, Jasmine had compiled extensive notes on operational changes needed. The restaurant had emptied except for staff, who moved nervously around the new owner as they completed closing duties. Jasmine gathered all management staff in the private dining room. Their faces reflected varying degrees of concern and defensiveness as she and Marcus presented their findings. The data is conclusive, Marcus explained, displaying charts on his laptop. Silver Spoon has systematically discriminated against certain customers through reservation manipulation, table assignments, and service prioritization. We simply try to accommodate our regulars, the assistant manager protested. Your regulars seem to fit a very specific profile, Jasmine observed. While guests who don't match that profile experience glitches and misunderstandings. She stood, commanding the room's attention. Let me be absolutely clear. This ends tonight. Culinary Heights has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination in any form. Every guest deserves the same exceptional experience, regardless of who they are or what they look like. Brandon raised his hand tentatively. What changes will you be implementing? Immediate changes include new reservation protocols with accountability, tracking, revised table assignment procedures, and mandatory customer service training, Jasmine stated. Long-term, we'll be restructuring management and revising hiring practices to build a team that reflects the diversity of Atlanta. She paused, letting her words sink in. Some of you will be part of that future. Others won't. That decision will be based on your actions starting right now. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. We reconvene at 9 a.m. tomorrow for a full staff meeting, Jasmine concluded. I expect complete transparency and cooperation from everyone. That's all for tonight. As the managers filed out, Diego remained. Ms. Carter, I want you to know that I've tried to address these issues before. The previous owner was resistant to change. Jasmine nodded. I believe you, Diego. That's why I'd like you to take a leadership role in the transition. Relief washed over his face. Thank you for that trust. After everyone else had left, Jasmine and Marcus sat alone in the restaurant Jasmine now owned. The space felt different, both foreign and familiar, a challenge and an opportunity. Should we get the PR team ready? Marcus asked. This could get messy when word gets out. No, Jasmine replied. No press releases, no public statements. We fix the problem first, then we talk about it. I'm not interested in appearing to address discrimination. I want to actually eliminate it. Marcus nodded approvingly. Like you did at Root when that food critic claimed your cuisine wasn't authentic enough. Exactly, Jasmine smiled. We let the food speak for itself. Here, we'll let the experience speak for itself. She looked around the empty restaurant, seeing beyond its current reality to its potential. Silver Spoon has been exclusive for decades, she said thoughtfully. I want it to be excellent instead. Excellence doesn't discriminate. The next morning arrived quickly. By 8:30 a.m., Jasmine and Marcus had already reviewed employee files, sales reports, and customer feedback data. When staff began arriving for the 9 a.m. meeting, many were visibly nervous. Having heard rumors about the new ownership, the dining room had been reconfigured with chairs for all 68 employees. As they filled the space, Jasmine observed the clear divide between front and back of house staff, not just in their uniforms, but in their demographics. At precisely 9 a.m., Jasmine stepped to the front of the room. Good morning. For those who haven't heard, my name is Jasmine Carter. As of yesterday, I am the owner of Silver Spoon. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Last night, I experienced your restaurant as a customer. I was ignored, dismissed, and disrespected, not because of a glitch or a misunderstanding, but because of what I look like. The room fell silent. That experience is unfortunately common for many customers. The data confirms it. But today isn't about blame, it's about change. For the next hour, Jasmine outlined her vision for Silver Spoon's transformation. She announced immediate policy changes, introduced new management protocols, and made it clear that every employee would be evaluated based on performance and commitment to inclusive excellence, not seniority or connections. As the meeting concluded and staff dispersed to prepare for service, Jasmine sat at the same table where she had been reluctantly seated the night before. A server, Alicia from the previous evening, approached cautiously. Ms. Carter, we've prepared the dining room for lunch service. Your usual table is ready whenever you'd like it. My usual table? Jasmine asked. Mr. Brandon said you should have our best table by the window from now on. Alicia explained. Jasmine shook her head. No, I'll sit here today. Here. Alicia looked confused. But this is a perfectly good table, Jasmine finished for her. Every table in this restaurant should be a good table, Alicia. That's the point. As Jasmine reviewed documents at her table near the kitchen, watching staff prepare for lunch service, a profound realization settled over her. As I sat at the table they suddenly found for me, I realized my success hadn't changed how the world saw me, but it had changed what I could do about it. 3 months after that pivotal evening at Silver Spoon Atlanta, the restaurant had undergone a transformation that went far beyond new menus and updated decor. The changes Jasmine implemented reverberated through every aspect of the operation, visible in everything from hiring practices to the diversity of guests now enjoying the restaurant's acclaimed cuisine. Brandon Westfield was no longer general manager. After a 2-week evaluation period, Jasmine had offered him a choice: accept a demotion to assistant manager with required diversity training, or resignation with a standard severance package. He chose the latter, departing with a terse email that avoided any acknowledgement of his role in the restaurant's discriminatory practices. His replacement, Alicia Dominguez, had been a senior server at Silver Spoon for 5 years. Despite her exceptional customer service ratings and management degree, she had been repeatedly passed over for promotion. The first thing Ms. Carter asked me was why I stayed so long in a place that didn't value my potential, Alicia told the staff during her first meeting as general manager. I told her I stayed because I knew I could make this restaurant better. I just needed the opportunity. Under Alicia's leadership and Jasmine's guidance, the operational changes were swift and comprehensive. Every host and server underwent extensive training on unconscious bias. Reservation systems were overhauled with new accountability measures that tracked patterns in seating and service times. Table assignments were now randomized through an algorithm that eliminated preferential treatment. The kitchen, under Diego's continued direction, remained a center of excellence, but now with clear advancement paths for diverse staff members. 2 sous chefs who had been confined to back-of-house roles despite their talent were now featured prominently in the restaurant's marketing and given opportunities to interact with guests. Perhaps most notably, Silver Spoon's clientele had diversified. The restaurant remained exclusive. Reservations were still required weeks in advance, but that exclusivity now stemmed from the quality of food and service rather than unspoken barriers to entry. We haven't lowered our standards, Jasmine explained to her executive team during their quarterly review. We've actually raised them by ensuring they're applied equally to everyone. The Atlanta location served as the prototype for changes that gradually rolled out across all 5 Silver Spoon restaurants. Each city presented unique challenges, but the core principles remained consistent: equal access, transparent policies, and genuine hospitality for all guests. 6 months after the acquisition, Food and Wine magazine requested an interview with Jasmine about the remarkable turnaround at Silver Spoon. The chain had seen a 22% increase in revenue despite making no changes to pricing, attributable entirely to higher table turns, increased beverage sales, and more diverse customer demographics. The interview took place at the Atlanta location during a busy lunch service. Jasmine chose to sit at the same table near the kitchen where she had been reluctantly seated that first night, though now the table was as sought after as any other in the restaurant. "This spot has special significance for you," noted Eliza Chun, the magazine's senior food editor. Jasmine nodded, watching guests of various backgrounds enjoying their meals throughout the dining room. "This table represents everything wrong with how fine dining has traditionally operated, and everything right about how it can change." "Your acquisition of Silver Spoon was quite sudden," Eliza observed. "Was transformation always part of your plan, or did something specific prompt these changes?" Jasmine considered her answer carefully. She had never publicly shared the full story of her first visit as owner. "Let's just say I conducted some first-hand research that confirmed what many people of color have experienced in fine dining for decades. The difference was that I had the authority to do something about it. And you did it without public announcements or diversity pledges," Eliza noted, reviewing her notes. "No press releases, no social media campaigns. Action speaks louder than PR statements," Jasmine replied. "Too many restaurants post black squares on Instagram while continuing to seat black diners by the kitchen door. I wanted substantial change before we talked about it." Eliza gestured around the bustling restaurant. "The results are impressive. Has there been any resistance?" "Of course," Jasmine acknowledged. "We lost some regular customers who preferred the old Silver Spoon. Several staff members left rather than adapt. But we've gained far more than we've lost: in talent, in customers, and in creating a model that other restaurants are starting to notice." Indeed, Silver Spoon's transformation had attracted attention throughout the industry. 3 other high-end restaurant groups had reached out to Jasmine for consultation on their own diversity initiatives. A major culinary school had invited her to develop a curriculum module on inclusive hospitality. "What would you say to other restaurant owners who claim they don't have bias issues in their establishments?" Eliza asked. "I'd say look at your data," Jasmine replied without hesitation. "Examine who gets seated where. Track wait times by customer demographics. Review who gets promoted and who stays stuck. The numbers rarely lie, even when we tell ourselves comfortable stories." After the interview, Jasmine walked through the kitchen, greeting staff by name and sampling preparations for the evening service. Diego had developed a new tasting menu that incorporated influences from his Mexican heritage alongside classical French techniques, something the previous ownership had discouraged. "This blackened redfish with poblano cream is exceptional," Jasmine told him after tasting. "It honors tradition while creating something new. Exactly what Silver Spoon should represent." Diego smiled. "My grandmother would be proud to see her flavors in a restaurant like this. Before, I kept these recipes at home." "The best restaurants reflect the full identities of the people who create the food," Jasmine replied, "including yours." That evening, Jasmine hosted a private dinner for the original Root team, the staff from her first restaurant who had supported her from the beginning. Many now held executive positions within Culinary Heights, but they gathered as equals around a large table, sharing stories and celebrating how far they had all come. "When I started Root, people told me upscale soul food was an oxymoron," Jasmine told the group. "When I bought Silver Spoon, they said I was reaching beyond my expertise. The common thread was the assumption that black excellence has limits." She raised her glass in a toast. "Here's to proving them wrong, again and again." Later that night, after everyone had left, Jasmine sat alone in the empty restaurant. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her to cook while telling stories about being refused service at lunch counters. She thought about her culinary school classmates who had received opportunities she had to fight for. She thought about the night she stood ignored at Silver Spoon's bar, watching others being seated ahead of her. The journey from that moment to now hadn't been simple or straight. It had required strategic thinking, calculated risks, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. But the results were undeniable, not just in business metrics, but in creating spaces where everyone could experience the joy of exceptional dining without the burden of prejudice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Chicago location was still struggling with staff transitions. A competing restaurant group had launched a similar concept nearby. The restaurant industry's deep-rooted issues couldn't be solved by one company alone. But tonight, in this moment of quiet reflection, Jasmine allowed herself to acknowledge how much had already changed. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more Black stories that reveal the true cost of prejudice and the power we all have to create change when we refuse to accept the status quo. 1 year after Jasmine's fateful visit to Silver Spoon, she received an unexpected email from Brandon Westfield, her former manager. "Ms. Carter, I've spent months reflecting on my time at Silver Spoon. Watching the restaurant's transformation from afar has forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about my own behavior. While I can't undo my actions, I wanted to acknowledge them and thank you for the lessons I've learned the hard way. Your changes at Silver Spoon have improved not just the restaurant, but the industry standard." Jasmine read the message twice before responding with a simple invitation for coffee. Their conversation was neither easy nor comfortable, but it represented something essential about change, that accountability can lead to growth, even after mistakes. Today, all Silver Spoon locations operate with the highest standards of both culinary excellence and equitable service. The restaurant group has become known for its inclusive hiring practices, mentorship programs for underrepresented culinary talents, and genuine hospitality that welcomes all guests equally. The true measure of Jasmine's success isn't found in profit margins or magazine features, but in the experiences of every guest who walks through Silver Spoon's doors and receives the respect they deserve. No reservations required.